Yeah, we got an interesting movie here because I don't think a lot of people know about this movie, even noir fans. Also, it's a balance of two pairs of brothers. You have the Sodermark brothers, Richard and Kurt.
Yep.
Kurt did a couple movies as well. This is Richard directing, and also this is written by Herman Mankiewicz.
Yeah.
And his famous brother Joseph Mankiewicz. So you have kind of royal, Hollywood's royalty
By
lineage
association.
by association in this movie. So today we're going to check out,
Christmas Holiday.
and I have no idea why it's called that.
It's a terrible title. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continued support of the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals to tell us some movies we should review in the future. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about, in the middle of noir season, right in the middle of noir era of 44, we have this classic B movie, Christmas Holiday.
When Lieutenant Charles Mason is stranded in New Orleans during a Christmas storm, he meets nightclub singer Jackie Lamont. As the two get further acquainted, Jackie reveals the secrets of her past, including a name change, a criminal husband, and a murder.
So Richard Sodermark and Kurt came from Germany. They left when Nazi occupied. Richard went on to direct a lot of noirs. He did Phantom Lady of this year, but he also did a horror, the classic Son of Dracula.
Son of Dracula. With Alucard. That was the first appearance of Alucard, which is Dracula backwards. So.
Yes, Alucard. And then his brother Kurt did, I think he wrote the script for Invisible Man and The Wolf Man. Richard would always get hired after people got sour with Frank Tuttle. So if Frank Tuttle got kicked, they would bring in Richard Sodermark because they almost have the same kind of aesthetic and look to him for films. And I think this, Frank Tuttle directed Glass Key that we talked about. Frank Tuttle was supposed to direct this movie, and then, of course, friction happened, and Richard joined right in. Herbert Mankiewicz did the screenplay. It's based on a book by a famous author,
W. Somerset Maugham.
Yeah, God. So and Herman, he's kind of famous because he wrote Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
After Citizen Kane, he could pretty much write any script he wanted and get sold, right?
Yeah.
He also did, I think, if you remember right, he did The Pride of St. Louis and The Pride of the Yankees.
Yep.
I remember those two screenplays. But Herman was a notorious alcoholic, but sometimes like Daryl Zanuck or somebody like Jack Warner, like even a drunk Herman Mankiewicz is far better than a lot of other writers.
Yeah, that was what Mank said when he was fired. Because he was actually fired during the script writing process. Showed up drunk to, it was producer Felix Jackson, I believe, went to his office and said, Felix, don't you think drunk Herman Mankiewicz is still better than Dwight Taylor sober? And he was rehired. Sorry, Dwight Taylor. It's not, no offense.
And then Herman's brother Joseph Mankiewicz directed like All About Eve. He got famous for the Manhattan Melodrama, and that started Joseph Mankiewicz's career. So yeah, that's pretty much behind the camera. And it's interesting. There's a lot of books about the Sodermarks, and there's a lot of books about the Mankiewicz. We could do an episode just on those two guys.
There's a whole
those
film
two
about
pair
Manx.
brothers, right? Yeah. But we have to get into the lead, which is Deanna Durbin, because she was the big hit in the 40s. She had records. I mean, we kind of, not the term in the 40s, but we would call her a pop star.
Yeah.
She was a pop star, and she did kind of moonlighting acting. But predominantly as a pop star, signed by Universal Pictures.
Yeah, and this actually was purchased, the rights were purchased as a vehicle for her because it was something kind of outside of what she had normally done. She'd done a couple acting gigs, but she'd never played someone with that kind of in between, kind of, she's got a dark past kind of a character. There's nothing that's been as serious for her at this point. And in fact, it was a big deal that the rights were purchased here because the rights actually had previously been rejected by future Cleopatra producer Walter Wagner. Tried to adapt the film, but the Hayes office said, nope, this is too scandalous, too much, and that's why there were so many changes from the book, because it's not a nightclub in the book, it's a brothel. It's not a singer, it's a prostitute.
It's not in Paris, it's in Orleans.
Oh, yeah, there too, yeah.
Yeah, so Deanna got her big hit for Every Sunday, starring with Judy Garland. She also did Three Smarts Girls. and that got her going. But it's funny because this is her peak in 1944, and she would retire almost 4 years later from film and never come back.
Yeah.
And then, and she predominantly made a lot of money for Universal with records that they pretty much, she was the vessel to be able to finance all the horror movies that they did. So she's kind of known as she saved Universal Monsters because her records were so popular and made so much money that Universal was able to finance a lot of their horror films based on her.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Now, the next person that you don't see a lot of is Gene Kelly's in this movie.
You don't see a lot of him like this with later work. Absolutely.
Yeah.
From what I had read, though, he was actually kind of known as an anti-hero, somewhat villainous performer prior to this. Not, never like, cutting the tails off cats or anything, but like, like kind of a not good guy in many other roles. And so he'd gotten his start. There was a number of films, For Me and My Gal, Thousand Cheers, Anchors Away, where he was not like the hero. But it's so weird because now he's famous for being the hero.
Right. And then dancing. It's funny. You have Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly. You think you would have like dance numbers and music and everything, you don't.
And the movie's called Christmas Holiday.
It's Christmas Holiday, which you have right. This is kind of interesting why we talk about it because it's something like, well, they don't even have a Christmas tree in this movie.
Yeah.
So Gene Kelly got signed after you did the play, The Time of Your Life. It was a big a big play. It wasn't a movie. And the play, David O. Selznick got a contract exclusively for David O. Selznick. And then he would sell off like half the contract for other people like Universal. And so even though he's exclusively signed under David O. Selznick, not a Hollywood production, he would auction off Gene Kelly to movies.
Just so weird.
Because back then it seems weird, but that you just test market. Maybe you work for these kind of movies. Maybe we work for these movies. Because back then you had to be a triple threat. You had to sing, dance, and act.
Yeah.
And Gene Kelly could do that.
And studios were known for their specific genres that they played in heavily, so that's what makes more sense about it. I always just thought it was weird because it's kind of like when you get that letter from like the bank saying we've sold your loan to someone else, and you're like, who? It's kind of like who do I now pay for this?
Exactly.
It's an odd thing, but Gene Kelly. Very unusual performance for someone who's only known him for things like Singing in the Rain, The Young Girls of
dancing.
I've never seen him in this kind of a performance.
A maniac serial killer with Mommy Enabler.
Yeah.
All right, so the cinematographer, interesting to note, is Woody Brendel. Now, he was still photography at RKO. He was on the set for Citizen Kane. He did an apprenticeship at Paramount. And then with his apprenticeship, he got hired and signed by Universal to work exclusively for Universal. And he shot majority of Deanna Durbin's music. So almost like he shot her music videos.
Yeah.
So when she's doing this movie, Richard's like, well, yeah, you shoot her all the time. You know what you go, like, look in the night, with the lighting and everything. So it's perfect hire.
Well, and Woody was probably also like, well, a Christmas Holiday, Gene Kelly Hurt's probably a musical. Okay, I'll do it, It goes back to it again. It's a very confusing system.
Yeah. And Woody would go on to do cinematography for the movie The Killers. With Ava Gardner and Burt Lancaster.
The 1946 one, which was directed by Robert Sodmek. So,
it always comes around, right? Yeah,
that's what I know him from more.
Yeah. So you have this a lot of like Hollywood in the 40s, like this. They have a concept, and then Phantom Lady, that's selling really hot. Well, who's the director? I got this. That's a Christmas movie. Let's get a noir for Christmas and just see if we can make money on it.
Yeah,
you can just see how the production, just from how that goes, how they cranked it out.
Yep, exactly.
So. Up next is our review for a movie I'm sure you never heard of. I'm sure it's under your radar, Christmas Holiday. So you have all the tropes that you have for noirs. You have a guy fish out of water. You got the bait. You got the backstory. You got the narrator. Because, of course, in a noir, when you're sitting at a cafe after you're doing your music and you're drinking a coffee in a cafe, you talk about how rotten your life is.
Yep.
And you go back in time.
It was basically the 50 years ago version of when we have music biopics and someone has to tell you their whole life before they get on the stage. Yeah. It's now I'm drunk and I have to tell you my whole experience of everything that's ever gone wrong to lead me to be this drunk.
But also I want to point, this is the reason I picked this movie is because they totally knew about the movie like Maltese Falcon, because they're like, oh, you have to do like dreamy sequence, you have to do this kind of thing. So it's very content wise, she's not a femme fatale, but she's a cog in the system. Yeah, Deanna Durbin is.
It's kind of like she's a mixture of the lead character from Rebecca being someone who doesn't really know if she can trust the people around her, but then she's also kind of mixed in with being almost like the lead character from Out of the Past, where there's this like backstory that's so heavily invested in what's going on, and it's going to lead you down this path where I'm not really sure it's going to mean anything at the end, but I'm going to tell you all of it. So it's kind of that larger scale question of the past.
But everybody has a rotten past to it. You got the guy who comes off from being in service, and his girlfriend doesn't want to see him anymore. And then the train, was it train? If I remember, the plane.
Yeah.
The plane stalls, and they're going to hang out in New Orleans, and then he sees her at the nightclub because of the photographer and everything. Mm-hmm. So you have all these little steps of just kind of fish out of water, but the end result doesn't really pay off very well.
To me, I thought the ending was where the movie was at its point where I was most interested. But at that point, it had spent so much time delving into the past that I wasn't as invested as I should have been. Because the real win of the movie is that climactic sequence at the end. But we spent so much time in this minutia. Right. I don't know if that mattered as much.
It's kind of melodramatic, wallowed, because Deanna Durbin didn't want to look trashy.
Yeah.
So they kind of wrote her to be very classy, the story very elegant, very, girl next door, which she liked to project that image.
Yeah.
And you spend a lot more time with that. We're right. We want to spend more time with Gene Kelly being a maniac.
Yeah, or at least her figuring it out. Like, because it feels like she's kind of just, being a cog in the system. Yeah, she really doesn't produce any results in any of that flashback sequence except for setting up that finale. Right. And it's like, if you don't want to be the multi-layered, flawed character, don't be in the movie.
Right. It's almost like, would all these events still happen if that character was not in here?
Yeah. People make that argument about Indiana Jones all the time. If he wasn't in Raiders, it would have still, been Raiders. I disagree. But this movie, it feels like, if you just excised her from the film,
right. Yeah.
Also it would still play out pretty similar.
Yeah. But you have a very interesting villain. I think they did it very well with Gene Kelly. You just don't have enough scene because gets enabled by Mom. Mom, obviously his mother, sees that he can't do anything wrong. He knows he kills people, and she's just like, oh, whatever.
Well, and there's a little bit of...
You got to understand him.
There's a little bit of, flaw to Gene Kelly's performance in that he, it's almost like he either A, doesn't understand that what he's doing is wrong, or B, feels bad and thinks that's going to make up for it. I feel bad for what I've done. So obviously it's not that big of a deal. It's kind of that, right. He's not really, taking any ownership of the horrors he's committing. Instead, it's like, well, this is unfortunate, but it's what happens.
They made me do it, right? Which is a perfect villain. It's like, I didn't want to kill him, but he's such a pain in the butt, and I had to do it. He killed his bookie, right? And then Mom, of course, an enabler, which you always have those kind of components of, all prisoners, moms visit you.
Yep.
Everybody's got a mom in prison.
How could anyone not like him, as Jerry Seinfeld's mother would say?
Yes, and he has a very charismatic. We talk about another component for psychopaths is they're charming. And Gene Kelly in this, of course, Gene Kelly, he's charming.
I think he's more effective in the film now because we know him as not that. You know what I mean? I think at the time, because the film got mixed reviews at the time and has a bit more of a stronger reappraisal today than it did back then for those people who actually can find a copy. And when it came out, it was mixed results. Really, some people, and it was on the same lines too, where some people loved Deanna Durbin, some people loathed her in the role. It was, you couldn't even find one consensus outside of maybe the score, which was nominated for an Oscar.
And now we get a soft because we all appreciate her, and then she left, and we all wanted her back. She turned down. She was first offered to come back with My Fair Lady. She said, "No, I'm really done with it." And she went to live on a farm out in Paris. But I understand why they're kind of friction, because this is Hollywood. Just crank it out, try to make money, slap a title on there to get everybody in the theater.
Yep.
And then we'll figure it out at the end. And people think that they're being played, you're going to get them rubbed the wrong way.
Yeah.
Especially with a title like this.
Yeah, it's kind of a, I don't know what the trailer looked like. I don't know how the film was perceived going in. I don't think we can ever get a full view of that because the film doesn't have a deluxe edition with all these special features. But it's tough to say that you would have felt like you got the movie you went in for.
Right. And especially this is December 1944, where you're still in war.
No, this movie first came out in July.
Oh, July.
The first release for this film was July, so it's you're not even really hitting it.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. The first release that I could find was in July. The film played through December, I believe, in some markets, but It's a very odd thing to release at that point.
Probably because they didn't know they're going to make a lot of money on it, so you want to stretch it out just to have some kind of return on it.
because films would stay in theaters for a long time, even up until the 80s, where films would stay in for a year sometimes. And I'm sure that was probably the case, but I can't imagine who's lining up for opening night at Christmas holiday in July.
But it's an interesting movie. This is the reason why I brought it up. It's an interesting movie that flies. A lot of hardcore noir fans don't really know about it. A lot of Gene Kelly fans don't really know about it. A lot of people who understand Herman Mankiewicz, read all the books, don't really know about this movie. Yeah. And it just seems that it's just below everybody's radar. And it's interesting to look at. All right, you can see all the tropes and just get this movie out and see if we could make some money out of it.
Yeah, it's weird to think that the screenwriter of Citizen Kane has films that are just gone. Like, we found it online streaming, but like not easy at all.
No.
So it's shocking to me that you have, a director who's notable. Did The Killers, did Son of Dracula. We've got a couple lead stars that are notable, a screenplay that's notable. We've got all these elements that are pretty notable.
Yeah.
I think a really great editor in Ted Kent, who did Bride of Frankenstein.
Right, he's very famous.
Man, very solid editing.
Yeah.
But it's just like, how is a movie completely different? I mean, I guess it has to do with quality. I don't think it's a great movie, but I'm surprised it's completely gone, because usually every movie is someone's favorite. So
yeah, and I'm sure hopefully there's the Film Preservation Society that actually has a subgroup that looks for noirs, finds somewhere to preserve it, because it's interesting. Yeah, you can't even find, if you find a Deanna Derman box set of her movies, this is not in it.
Yeah.
You can find all the other ones, but this is not in it.
Yeah, if the movie Mank had been a bigger hit for like viewers, I know it was nominated for Best Picture, but like general movie-going audiences didn't care about it. If the movie had really worked for general movie-going audience, I guarantee you we'd see a box set with this movie. But probably, I don't think, I think it's just a case of who's going to pay for this? Who's going to give us money to make a DVD out of this?
I still, as a noir fan, I do like the cafe scene. I do kind of like the cop at the window, kind of like, what are you guys doing here? Right, with the ending. So you have a lot of beats and points that I love about noirs. But overall, it's one of those, it's very forgettable. It's like, did I watch that movie? What the heck? What happened again?
I read one review that summed up my thoughts a lot. And it's not to cite the film too much, but they said tired retread, and I felt that. I felt that this has a lot of the same beats that we've seen before, done worse than we've seen them. Again, I really think the ending was great, that, but it was too late for it to really win me back over. Yes. I was in the movie, I think, for 70 minutes before we started to get some action, some build up, some movement, and I was like, oh my god!
Right, because she talks about my life was rotten, and we go back to playing housekeeper.
Yeah, because I appreciated that about Out in the Past. Because Out in the Past, we spend time with this kind of, let me give you a little bit of my backstory, but it's not the whole movie. It's a sizable chunk of Out of the Past, but then we get to the meat of the story. Yeah. And I felt like, to be honest, I was probably more interested in Dean Heron's Charles Mason. I was interested in him. Is he going to get his girl back? I was
you follow more him than Gene.
Yeah, I was interested in the Gene Kelly character. I wanted more of. The character I was the least interested in was Jackie Lamont, which is a problem when she's the star narrator.
Right. Yeah. So I'll be kind of funny to say, but have you seen Christmas Holiday?
Yeah, not have you been to a Christmas holiday. I'm pretty sure you have. But yeah, have you seen the film? Let us know. Hey, you know what? I really like the director's work on The Killers. I really like the director's work on Dracula. So maybe tell us if there's another film that we should
Richard
cover.
Mark Dutt, yeah.
Yeah, because he's got a good list.
Yeah, him and his brother, yeah. Maybe even do Kurt's.
Ooh, yeah. I'd like to do a back-to-back. We'll do a Robert one time and a Kurt next and compete. But yeah, let us know what you thought about the film down below. You can currently find it streaming on a number of streams from YouTube, or if you have a better version of it, let us know if you saw it a different version. Yeah, and thank you guys for joining us. Please make sure to like and subscribe right down there. You got a couple seconds. Do it right now. And then please go and check out the Patreon, and we'll see you guys next time. Yeah, so you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
Holiday!
Yeah.